Hi, 7th grade. We have already learned how to mix acrylic paint to make hues and shades on our palette, but today we are going to learn 3 different ways to blend acrylic paint on our paper. The reason you're going to learn this is so you can apply these different methods to your project. I'm going to demo for 5 minutes and then you'll have the remainder of class to experiment on your own. Let's go over some key vocab. Gradient is a gradual color change with 1 or 2 colors. Variegated is blended color mixing of 2 or more colors. Wet on wet is a painting technique where layers of wet paint are applied to more wet paint. Wet on dry is a painting technique where wet paint is applied to a dry surface. Glazing is a thin, transparent, see-through layer on a painting. Here are some examples of blended acrylic paint. You can see how the artist blended their paint on the surface to create a gradient or variegated blended effect. Your supplies will be in the middle of your table and you'll need paper, paint, tape, a palette for holding your paint, flat brushes, a cup of water, and paper towels for drying off your brushes and your artboard. Put a dime-size amount of all the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and white onto your palette. Mix together white and a small amount of one color with the white to create a light shade of that color. Some housekeeping items to keep in mind. If you spill something on the floor, it needs to be cleaned up immediately. Also, do not put straight paint down the sink. You should wipe it out of your palette and put it in the trash. You are going to tape out 3 boxes on your paper just like we did last week. I will show you again for a refresher. Remember, they do not have to be perfect. Start by painting one box, one solid color to let it dry for later. I am using flat brushes to make it easier to move the paint around since I'm moving side to side and up and down, and it is sort of a larger surface. The first way I am going to show you how to blend acrylic paint is wet on wet. In this technique, we are going to use 2 different values of colors, so the plain color itself and the color you land. In the new box, dip your brush in the straight color, and on one side of your box, paint it halfway. Rinse your brush and dry it on the paper towel, or you can use a new brush and dip your brush in the lightened color, and on the plain side of paper, we will paint the other color. Make the paints touch or meet in the middle of the paper and gradually blend them together by brushing side to side to create a gradient on the paper by mixing the wet paint into wet paint. The visual effects created from wet on wet blending are soft edges and smooth transitions. You can see I'm moving my brush side to side, gradually going up and down my paper, not moving spots, but just moving up and down ever so slowly, dragging paint to create a gradient. The next type of blending acrylic paint on your paper is wet on dry. We'll use the box we already painted one solid color on and make sure it's dry. Now I'm going to go in with that lighter shade and put it on top of the already dried layer on the top half only. I'm going to rinse out my brush and pull the paint from the top to the bottom gradually. And notice how it blends with the dried paint to create a gradient as the paint lessens as you move up and down the paper. I rinse out my brush a few times to get less and less paint to make the undercolor shine through more. This might take some time. The visual effects of wet on dry blending are hard edges, sharp lines, and this can be used to add detail to your paintings and have more control over color placement. Different feelings or ideas or textures can be achieved with each of the different ways of blending that I'm demonstrating. You do not have to choose blue, that's just what I chose. You may choose any of the 3 primary colors, but I wonder what feelings can be provoked from using a different color or blending method. The third method of blending acrylics is one color blending or glazing. I will start by applying one color on one edge of the paper, then I'm going to clean out the brush and lightly damp it on the paper towel, but leave it a little damp. I'm using the water left in my brush to blend it out to the other side to create a gradient. Notice the color blending out to the white on the paper on the bottom. I am continuously cleaning up my brush to get less and less paint as I go to the top. The visual effects of glazing can be a glowing effect, create depth, and enhance colors that are already on your painting. As you can see in all these, I'm using a good amount of water. I am swiping left to right with my paintbrush, and I am not really picking up from a different spot. I'm picking up where I left off, and I'm not jumping around the box. I'm going up and down, swiping left to right. This helps the gradient be even. I will show you a variegated or blended color mixing using 2 or more colors. I'm doing this using the wet on wet technique. This is something that you can try once you complete all 3 ways of blending using one color on your paper. There are a lot of ways that acrylic paint can be blended on paper, and I showed you 3 ways. When you go back to your seats, get the supplies you need from the middle of your table, tape your paper, and begin experimenting with wet on wet. Don't forget to paint one square a solid color to let it dry. You have the remainder of class. You may return to your seats and begin.